Well, it's very clear right now that we've been successful in dramatically reducing HIV/AIDS transmission in all populations, with the exception of young people under 25, especially gay and bisexual identified young men. So AIDS isn't over. We do not have a cure. We do not have a vaccine, but we have even better strategies now for preventing transmission. And I think, for my generation, the slogan very much was silence equals death. But I think today's slogan really ought to be that treatment equals prevention. And that in the absence of a vaccine or a cure, what we do know is that people like myself who are HIV positive but being successfully treated are no longer capable of transmitting the virus. And now we know that one pill a day, pre-exposure prophylaxis, can prevent young people or anyone from getting infected. So that's some good news and good reason to redouble our education efforts. The infection rate among that particular population, young, gay, and bi men under 25, has, I think, gone up by 133%, which is pretty shocking. And for somebody like me, and I imagine you as well, it's a devastating statistic. So I think, first of all, we have to acknowledge that the overwhelming majority of people living with HIV today contracted it after the condom warning went out. So clearly the condom warning in and of itself, by itself, is not working. But I think there's also an assumption, especially for many of the long-time activists, that all young people arrive in the big cities fully informed and fully educated about HIV and how it works and how to prevent it. But that's simply not the case. I interact a lot with young people in the Castro, where I still live today, and where every weekend there are hundreds, thousands of this high-risk population who are using alcohol. Some of them are using drugs, they're partying, and unfortunately a significant number of them are getting infected. When I talk to them, I learn that many of them come from school districts where there was never any kind of sex education, let alone HIV prevention. And also, there's a new and cruel stigma afoot, and it is extremely destructive. For my generation, we endured horrendous stigma, but the stigma came from the outside world. It came from homophobia, from straight people who hated us, who were glad we were dying and thought it was God's will that we suffer and die. The stigma young people face today comes from their own community. People saying, well, how could you be infected? How stupid are you? Are you on crystal meth? What's this problem? There's a lot of shaming, a lot of blaming, a lot of finger wagging. None of that helps. What we need to do is arm these young people with the information, the facts they need, and the support and the personal encouragement and love and respect. That's, I think, the strategy that can work. Yeah, you don't want to have to take these meds for the rest of your life. And if you have to choose between taking one pill a day during the period in your life when you're sexually active and not in a monogamous relationship, weigh that against taking a handful of drugs every day for the rest of your life and the expense that's involved in the toxicity. And I want to be careful when I talk about this, because I got into the very first clinical trial 1 million years ago. I'm one of the longest living survivors of HIV on the planet. And I have been using these drugs, all the different classes of drugs, all the different versions of them over the decades. And yes, I have suffered from some really seriously unpleasant side effects and consequences. But I am alive, and I just turned 60. I'm working full-time. My life is full of joy and happiness. So yeah, you don't want to have to take those meds. Do what you can to prevent yourself from being in that position. But thank God they've gotten this far, and let's continue to hope and agitate and demand that they get further and produce that vaccine and the cure that can be made available to all the people on this planet who, unlike me, do not have access to these life-saving medications. Well, I have many hopes for the future. One is to see more of it unfold. But also, I want my gay brothers and my gay and bisexual brothers to feel the kind of solidarity my generation felt when we were fighting back against AIDS. And also, I want them to see the fight against AIDS and the fight for LGBT equality as part of a larger effort, a worldwide effort for peace and for social and economic justice. We're just a part of it. I think any movement that seeks only to advance the interests of its own membership is a shallow movement. I like to be part of a big movement.